I still remember the exact moment when the idea of the road trip first came to life. It was a quiet Friday evening, and I was sitting in my room, scrolling through old photos on my phone. I saw pictures of places I had visited before, small adventures I had taken, and moments that once felt big but now seemed distant. And then it hit me, I wanted something new. Something bigger. Something unforgettable. That's when I texted my best friend, Emma. Do you want to go on a road trip? I didn't expect her to reply so quickly, but within seconds, my phone lit up. Yes. When do we leave? And just like that, everything began. We didn't spend weeks planning or organizing every detail. In fact, that was part of the excitement. We wanted it to feel spontaneous, free, and a little bit unpredictable. We packed a few bags, grabbed snacks, made a playlist full of our favorite songs, and the next morning, we were on the road. At the beginning, everything felt normal. We were excited, of course, but it still hadn't fully hit me that we were actually doing it. We were driving with no strict schedule, no pressure, and no clear destination, just a general direction and a lot of curiosity. The first few hours were filled with laughter. One of my favorite moments happened on the second day. We had been driving for hours, and we decided to take a random exit without knowing where it would lead. It felt like a small, impulsive decision, but it turned into something amazing. We ended up in a tiny town that didn't even appear clearly on our map. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other. There was a small cafe on the corner, and we decided to stop there. Inside, it was warm and cozy. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and there was soft music playing in the background. We ordered coffee and homemade pie, and I swear it was one of the best things I've ever tasted. But what made it special wasn't just the food, it was the people. The woman who worked there started talking to us, asking where we were from and where we were going. When we told her we didn't really have a plan, she smiled and said, "Those are always the best journeys." We stayed there longer than we expected, just talking and enjoying the moment. It felt simple, but somehow meaningful. Like we had discovered a small piece of the world that not many people knew about. Back on the road, we felt even more excited. Every turn felt like a new possibility. Every stop felt like a new story waiting to happen. Of course, not everything went perfectly, and honestly, that was part of the fun. On the third day, we got lost. Not just a little lost. Completely lost. Our GPS stopped working, and we had no signal on our phones. At first, we were a bit stressed. We had no idea where we were, and the road seemed to go on forever. But after a while, something changed. We started laughing. There we were, in the middle of nowhere, with no clear direction, and somehow, it felt exciting instead of scary. We rolled down the windows, let the wind fill the car, and just kept driving. Eventually, we found our way back to a main road. But that experience stayed with me. It taught me that sometimes, not knowing where you are can lead to the most memorable moments. Another highlight of the trip was watching the sunset one evening. We had pulled over on the side of the road because the sky looked too beautiful to ignore. The colors were incredible, shades of orange, pink, and purple blending together in a way that almost didn't feel real. We sat on the hood of the car, completely silent for a few minutes, just watching. It was one of those rare moments where everything feels peaceful. No noise, no distractions, just you and the world in front of you. I remember thinking, this is exactly why we did this. As the days passed, we continued exploring new places. Some were big and lively, full of energy and people. Others were quiet and calm, where time seemed to move more slowly. We met different people along the way, each with their own stories, their own perspectives. Some conversations lasted only a few minutes, but they still left an impression. What surprised me the most was how quickly I adapted to this new way of living. Without a strict routine, without constant planning, I felt more present, more aware of everything around me. I started noticing small details, the sound of the wind, the way the light changed throughout the day, the feeling of being somewhere completely new. And through it all, I felt incredibly happy. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything felt real. There was one night that I'll never forget. We had decided to sleep in the car instead of finding a hotel. It wasn't the most comfortable decision, but it turned out to be one of the best. We parked in a safe spot, surrounded by nature. The sky was clear, and the stars were brighter than anything I had ever seen before. We lay back and looked up, trying to count them, even though it was impossible. We talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. It was one of those deep conversations that only happen when you're completely relaxed and open. In that moment, I realized how important experiences like this are. Not just for the places you visit, but for the connections you build. By the time the trip started coming to an end, I felt a mix of emotions. I was tired, of course, but also incredibly grateful. Grateful for every mile, every wrong turn, every laugh, every unexpected moment. When we finally returned home, everything felt a little different. The same streets, the same buildings, but I wasn't the same person who had left. I had learned something important. You don't need a perfect plan to have a perfect experience. Sometimes, the best memories come from the moments you didn't plan at all. That road trip wasn't just about traveling from one place to another. It was about freedom, discovery, and learning to enjoy the journey itself. And even now, whenever I think about it, I can't help but smile. Because it truly was one of the most fun, unforgettable experiences of my life. And I know it won't be the last. A few months have passed since that trip, but sometimes it still feels like it happened yesterday. Certain memories remain incredibly clear in my mind, almost like scenes from a movie I've watched 100 times. All it takes is hearing one of the songs from our playlist or seeing an empty highway at sunset, and suddenly I'm back in that car again. What surprised me most after returning home was how difficult it felt to adjust to normal life again. During the trip, every day had been different. Every morning brought something unexpected. We never knew where we would end up, who we would meet, or what kind of story the day would create. But back home, everything returned to schedules, alarms, and routines. For the first few days, I kept catching myself staring out the window, wishing I was still traveling. Emma felt the same way. One evening, she called me unexpectedly. "Do you ever think about just leaving again?" she asked. I laughed because I knew exactly what she meant. "Every single day," I replied. There was a short silence before she said, "I think the trip changed us." And honestly, she was right. Before the road trip, I used to overthink everything. I wanted plans, certainty, and control. I worried too much about small problems and wasted energy stressing over things that didn't really matter. But something about being on the road changed the way I looked at life. When you spend days traveling without knowing exactly what comes next, you slowly become more comfortable with uncertainty. You learn that not every problem is a disaster. Sometimes things go wrong, and somehow they still become good memories later. Like the night it started raining while we were trying to find a place to stay. We had waited too long to book a hotel, and suddenly every place nearby was full. At first, we panicked a little. We were exhausted, hungry, and completely soaked from running through the rain. For almost an hour, we drove around trying to find somewhere to sleep. Finally, we found a tiny roadside motel with a flickering sign outside. It definitely wasn't fancy, but at that point we didn't care. We walked into the room laughing uncontrollably because of how funny the situation had become. Our clothes were wet, our hair looked terrible, and we were eating chips for dinner while sitting on the floor. And somehow, it became one of the funniest nights of the entire trip. That's the strange thing about memories. The moments that seem inconvenient or stressful at the time often become the stories you remember the most. Another memory that stayed with me happened completely by accident. We had stopped at a gas station somewhere late at night. It was one of those quiet places in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by darkness. While Emma went inside to buy snacks, I stayed outside near the car. An older man standing nearby started talking to me. At first, it was just casual conversation. He asked where we were headed, and I explained that we were on a road trip without much of a plan. He smiled and nodded slowly. Then he said something I still think about sometimes. "Don't rush through moments like this," he told me. "One day, these will be the memories you miss the most." At the time, it sounded like simple advice. But the more I thought about it, the more meaningful it became. Because during normal life, people are often in such a hurry. always thinking about the next task, the next week, the next goal. But during that trip, for the first time in a long while, I truly felt present. I wasn't constantly checking the time or worrying about what came next. I was just experiencing things as they happened. And maybe that's why the trip felt so special. Not because every moment was exciting, but because we were fully living those moments. Toward the end of the journey, Emma and I created a small tradition. Every night before sleeping, we would each say our favorite part of the day. Sometimes it was something important, like discovering a beautiful place or meeting interesting people. But often it was something tiny. A funny conversation. A song playing at the perfect moment. The smell of coffee early in the morning. The sound of rain on the roof of the car. Those little things became surprisingly meaningful. I think that trip taught me that happiness is rarely one huge moment. Usually, it's a collection of small moments that slowly become unforgettable together. When I look back now, I don't just remember the places we visited. I remember feelings. The excitement of waking up early and getting back on the road. The peaceful silence during long drives. The way the sky looked at dusk. The feeling of freedom every time we rolled the windows down and let the cold air rush inside the car. And most of all, I remember feeling alive. Truly alive. That road trip reminded me that life doesn't always need to be perfectly organized to be beautiful. Sometimes the best experiences happen when you stop trying to control everything and simply allow yourself to move forward. Since then, I've tried to carry that mindset with me. I try to say yes more often. I try to worry less about perfect timing. And I try to appreciate ordinary moments before they disappear. Because one thing I learned during that trip is that memories are being created all the time, even during moments that seem small or unimportant. You usually don't realize how special a moment was until it becomes part of the past. And maybe that's why I still think about that journey so often. Not because it was glamorous or perfect, but because, for a little while, life felt simple. Just two friends, an open road, endless possibilities, and the feeling that the world was much bigger than our everyday routines. And honestly, I think everyone deserves to experience something like that at least once in their life.